I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim. We're talking the coaching carousel, and we might talk a little bit about some comments from our good old buddy, Colin Cowherd, about Caleb Williams and his potential landing spot with the Chicago Bears. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube. Also, make sure to be following and subscribed to the other show I'm a part of, the Big Ten Huddle. We're going to go live Tuesday night, 9 p.m. We are going to talk about the NFL draft. We're going to talk about the combine. I'm not exactly sure all that we're going to talk about, but I know at least at some point I'm going to talk about how quarterbacks are overvalued in the draft. I kind of bang that drum all the time if you've listened to this pod before, but make sure you are locked in both on the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast and the Big Ten Huddle. We're going to talk about the coaching carousel here. And it's been a hot minute since I've really talked about content and talked about what's going on in the college football world. So if you're listening to this and you're like, Zach, Chip Kelly, he jumped to Ohio State a couple of weeks ago. Alex Grinched left for Wisconsin like a month ago. Eric Bieniemy, that was a week ago. What's going on? I know. Life has happened, but we're back, baby. We're going to do this thing, okay? And as you know, if things happen, I'm going to talk about it. And so I want to start with Ohio State and Chip Kelly, because ultimately that will lead to the UCLA discussion with Eric Bieniemy, the new offensive coordinator. Chip Kelly left UCLA, somewhat mutual parting, if you want to call it that. It was a bad relationship. It was a bad relationship with UCLA and Chip Kelly. It was definitely not a good fit for the head man in Los Angeles. And so he left, and he left after honestly a pretty good run at UCLA. His first 3 seasons were not great. 3-9, 4-8, 3-4 in the COVID year. But then 8-4, 9-4, finished 21st in the country, according to both polls. And then 8-5 this year, including a win over USC. And so you look at that, 35-34 kind of turned UCLA around. So good on them, for him to be able to do that. And, if you want to go back, they were 6-7 under Jim Mora the year before. And, Jim Mora, it started out well for him at UCLA, and then it got pretty bad. 2016, 4-8, 2017, 5-6 in the last 2 games were not him. And so he was trying to turn a program around that needed it and got them to where they needed to go, I think. Right. So what was going on? Well, I think a couple things. One, I think Chip Kelly just didn't jive with the UCLA faithful. I think they were tired. And part of it was, I don't think Chip Kelly loves recruiting. He wants to coach football. And so, they weren't getting along. he wasn't recruiting, doesn't want to recruit really. And if you're not going to try to recruit and you're in LA and you're the second best team in LA, USC being the top team, that's not going to work out well for you. And so Chip Kelly leaves. There were rumors that he actually reached out to Iowa to be their offensive coordinator, which that would have been an odd fit. I don't think that would have worked. But obviously, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly have a history. So a lot of people want to talk, is this a good fit? Is this a good idea? According to Josh Pate, this is a massive upgrade from Bill O'Brien to Chip Kelly. Others aren't as excited about. Here's my take on it. I am not the biggest fan of the move, but I'll say this. I think Ohio State lucked out because I don't think Bill O'Brien was a good hire at all. And I'm not sure I am a fan of some of Ryan Day's decision-making. Bill O'Brien is, I know, well regarded as a quarterbacks guy. But if you go back and look at some of that all the Alabama games when he was there, Bryce Young saved his bacon more often than not. I thought he got them into a lot of third and longs. I don't think he did a great job with situational play calling. And I think we're going to look at some of this, a lot of the same, looking at the 2022 offense and the 2023 offense, in that those offenses, despite the fact having, at least in 2022, good to really good offensive lines and at least decent running backs, although I know they were hurt, they couldn't run the ball consistently. Right? This past year, we got Travion Henderson. I'm saying we. I know this is a Big Ten podcast. You guys know I'm a Buckeye fan, so a little bit of my Buckeye blood is coming out here. But you've got Travion Henderson, you've got Dallin Hayden, and they can't run the ball. And that's what they have been struggling with for the past several years now, is inconsistent offensive production. And now you're going to bring in Bill O'Brien? No. That's a bad idea. So I think Ohio State really lucked out. Here comes Chip Kelly, where I still have some concerns, albeit they're not as big. They're not as much about play calling and more about relationship and can Chip Kelly do it in more of a strong conference, right? Because he made a lot of his hay with his tempo and being kind of an offensive innovator. And then he would go up against really strong defenses and really and struggle. That being said, you look at some of the personnel and you realize, okay, again, he didn't recruit the greatest. He wasn't a great recruiter. And so what he did was he did a good job of developing running backs. Did what he could with the offensive line, but often the receivers were not that great. The quarterback play, particularly the passing game, was not great. And if they were able to shut down and kind of limit the pass game, it really limited the run game. I'm not concerned about the pass game under Ryan Day. Now, Will Howard, I'm still not sure about him, but I think the run game, which has, I think, been the biggest issue under Ryan Day, I think the run game is actually going to be fine with Chip Kelly. You've got probably the best backfield in the country, if not a top 3 backfield, with Judkins and Henderson and Hayden. Getting McLaughlin to come from Alabama really solidifies that interior of the offensive line. And now you've got a run threat at the quarterback position in Will Howard. So I think the run game with some of Chip Kelly's scheme is going to be really, really good. My question is offensive development. And if Ryan Day is trying to hand off the keys to other offensive players or offensive coaches, he's probably still going to have a hand in developing quarterbacks. But I do wonder, I don't know if Chip Kelly's ever developed great quarterbacks. Like, who's the best quarterback that he's developed? DTR is he developed a bit, but I don't think he was a great passer by any stretch of the imagination. Jeremiah Masoli, Dennis Dixon, trying to think, Darren Thomas, like those guys, they were not good passers. Like they had great stats, but you go back and look at the film and you're like, eek, they got a lot of cheap junk yards because of the way they run their offense. So I'm a little concerned about that. I'm concerned about when he goes up against power teams like, ironically, Oregon and Penn State and Michigan. I think there's also a concern with him going back and being a subordinate to someone who used to be his subordinate. I think that could work out really well because they know each other really well, or I think it could blow up in their faces. That being said, I think it's an upgrade from Bill O'Brien. I'm intrigued, especially with Will Howard being a bit more mobile, and especially with Julian Sayin and Aaron Nolan coming in. I think their mobility, I think that really helps. So overall, if I were to kind of grade the hire, I'd probably put it at a solid B, maybe a B plus. I do think I think it's an upgrade. I think it could be a huge upgrade over Bill. I'm going to move to the team that is replacing Chip Kelly, and that is UCLA. They hired Deshaun Foster, who is he was the running backs coach for UCLA. It's a really significant upgrade for his position, right? Like he was the running backs coach. He wasn't anything more than that. He's been at UCLA for a hot minute, right? Like he's been there for a while. He was there under Jim Mora, started there at 2017, been there, ever since. Obviously he loves UCLA. He was a running back there from 1998 to 2001. Had success in the NFL as a running back, right? And then has been at UCLA as a coach in some capacity for every part of his coaching career except Texas Tech in 2016. He was a running backs coach there. UCLA brought him back, and he's done a good job. He's done a really good job for them. It's not often that you see a running backs coach promoted to the head coach. And so you got to think that there's a few reasons for this. One, to provide some continuity and leadership, right? Chip Kelly left like at a time where it's really hard to leave, which is it's right after the second recruiting window. And you're in the midst of starting to prep for spring ball, which is going to be about 3 weeks later. So you got to install some things. And you've also got to try to convince recruits and your remaining roster, hey, don't leave with the coach. Don't leave with the head coach. And so it's important to have somebody on that staff to provide some continuity. So while I don't think it's the best move to hire your running backs coach, I can understand it. I think he's getting a bit more buzz as a head coaching candidate. So this will be interesting. It's also just hard. Like, who are you going to hire in the middle of February? And so Chip Kelly left UCLA in a bit of a lurch, while to be fair, I think UCLA left Chip Kelly in a bit of the lurch too. I don't think either of them are lack culpability here, but Deshaun Foster is the head coach. And so with that, you've got to hire a home run in at least one of your coordinators. I think that's what they did with Eric Bieniemy. He is someone that I don't think anyone thought would come. Obviously, he was let go by the Commanders with Dan Quinn coming in. He was kind of handpicked to be Ron Rivera's assistant head coach. And that was after winning 2 Super Bowls with the Chiefs. And so people might think, oh, well, he was fired. Why is he a good hire? Because did you see what he did with the Chiefs? Right? This guy knows how to coach an offense. And not only that, but even regardless of his recruiting chops, which that they are questionable, right? Because his entire career as a coach has been in the NFL, save 5 years. Colorado as a running backs coach, and then UCLA, ironically, 2003 to 2005. And he was the running backs coach and a recruiting coordinator. So recruiting has obviously changed in 19 years, but it's not like this is a guy that has no idea what's going on. He knows how to coordinate offenses. And not only, has he done the recruiting coordinating thing, but when he goes into a recruit's home, like a quarterback's home, for instance, so like, what are you going to do? Hey, remember that guy that won like 3 Super Bowls, Patrick Mahomes, that guy, like the hottest name in the NFL right now? I coached him. See these rings? See these 2 rings I got? I don't have rings if you're watching the YouTube. You can see my wedding ring. It's not the same. I got 2 Super Bowl rings with the best quarterback in the league right now. I did that. And you know what? I can develop you into that too. That's the kind of cachet you need, especially if you are UCLA, because again, you need an ace in the hole when you've got UCLA in your back or USC in your backyard, because USC is going to attract all the attention, especially with Alex Grinch. I think Danton Lynn, the more I am reading on USC and looking at their staff, I really do think that they are poised, not this year, but I think they're poised the next 2 to 3 years to really elevate back into the top 3 or 4 programs in the Big Ten and a perennial top 10 team in the country. I do think that they are trending that way, barring, complete collapse. They have a lot of pieces to replace on the offensive side of the ball this year, and they have to replace a lot of depth on the defense. But UCLA is a team that I think they needed this. They needed a big name to come in, and he knows UCLA. He's I think he knows the West Coast, and he's bringing a cachet to a head coach that doesn't have much cachet in the sense of like big coaching chops. It doesn't mean that Deshaun Foster can't hack it. I think it's just more there's a lot of questions around him. And so getting Eric Bieniemy, it really positions them well. Are they going to do well their first year? Probably not, right? Like I think you have to be patient if you're a UCLA fan. But, and it's a big but, I think the Bruins brass know that. I think Deshaun Foster knows that he's got to recruit. I think Eric Bieniemy, bringing in that recruiting coordinator experience, I think that's going to be a big deal. So I like this hire. I think it's like, again, grading hires. The Bieniemy hire is an A+. Like it's a slam dunk hire. And who would have thought you would have been able to get him, 1 year off of coaching the NFL. And again, just because he got let go, I think he got let go by Dan Quinn. I think that's probably a personality clash more than anything else. Dan Quinn is starting over. He wants to run his team. And you have to understand too, like, I know he was sharing play calling duties with Andy Reid, but he was helping to coordinate the best offense in the league for 2 Super Bowls, and was in position to get a third, if not for a bunch of injuries on the offensive line. So, love the hire. Let's talk Badgers and how they just got Grinched. I love Luke Fickell, and boy, do I want him to succeed. But I have no idea what he's doing with Alex Grinch. No clue. No clue what he's doing. He's been awful. Let me rephrase that. He dramatically shifted the defense and helped them become a force for Washington State from 2015 to 2017. And that was a big deal, right? Grinched was a hot name in the coaching market, and Ohio State got a hold of him, and he was tasked to work with Greg Schiano. And Alex Grinch and Greg Schiano turned in one of the worst defenses in Ohio State history. Now, there's a lot of conversation behind the scenes that Schiano and Grinch did not mesh well together, that Grinch wanted to coordinate the defense on his own. I'm not sure all that. There was also some other not great defensive assistants that were there. Billy Davis as the linebackers coach, who admittedly said he did not do a good job. But Alex Grinch, after 1 year, he agreed to 2 years. After 1 year, jumped ship to Oklahoma, where he helped improve the defense at Oklahoma. That didn't take much because the defense under Mike Stoops the year before finished 101st in scoring defense and 130th in passing defense. Pretty sure the 130th at the time was the worst in college football. So there's nowhere else to go but up, right? Good job, Mike Stoops. And so the defense, got better, I guess, at least better until they, I think, gave up the most points in a college football playoff game up to that point, only for that record to be broken by TCU a few years later. They gave up 63 to the LSU Tigers. Probably would have given up about 100 if they didn't call off the dogs. So good job, Alex Grinch. And Oklahoma's defense never was really the shining star in Norman, but it was exceedingly average. Exceedingly average is probably the best way I'd put it. There'd be glimpses of hope, and then, they'd collapse. And then, of course, Lincoln Riley brought Grinch over to USC with him because, of course, what's the definition of insanity? Just keep trying the same thing and expect different results. Granted, the roster that they inherited in 2021, it was not good. Finished as one of the worst units statistically in program history. So again, not great. But then you look at his defensive performances, the collapse in the Pac-12 championship game, the collapse against Tulane, and then this past year, it was like there was no defense. There was a stretch of 7 games where opponents scored over 41 points 5 times. In 7 games. 5 times, 41 points or more. That's not good enough. Not good, especially at a blue blood. And that's a track record. That's according to Wikipedia, by the way. That's not good, right? It's awful. So you're thinking, okay, he needs to go back to being a safeties coach. He needs to go back to the drawing board, reinvent himself. And so Luke Fickell hires him as a safeties coach. Good. And a co-defensive coordinator with Mike Tressel. Not good. What are you doing? He's awful. He has been awful. Objectively, he has been awful. And it begs this question. What's the point? Is he trying to groom Luke Fick or Alex Grinch for taking Mike Tressel's place at some point? Because if he is, he better hope that he's learned some lessons. Because the reality is, you're not going to get the same level of talent at Wisconsin that you're going to get at USC. Despite the fact that I think Luke Fickell is going to continue to upgrade the coaching or the recruiting there. And so I don't necessarily understand the hire. It helps that Mike Tressel's there. I think that's a good buffer, but I don't understand I don't understand the hire, especially because there is a track record of Grinched not working well with another co-coordinator. He wanted to call the defense at Ohio State, and he had to share with Schiano, and that did not go well. And so maybe Tressel and Fickell have more similar philosophies. But at first glance, it's a head-scratching hire. And I think especially with less talent at Wisconsin, now it does help that I think Fickell is a defensive-minded head coach. So I think that probably helps grease the skids a bit. But I don't understand the hire. I don't. If I were to grade it, I would grade it a D, because everywhere he's gone, the defense has been a disappointment. And they've had players, right? At all three stops. They've recruited well. They've gotten 4 and 5 star guys, but never had an impact defense. So I think it's a D hire. I think it's a bad fit overall for the Badgers. I really hope I'm wrong, because I really want Luke Fickell to do well. So I know there's more coaching things out there, but that's what I'm going to touch base on this episode. One last thing. This is getting into the combine, and we're going to talk about this a little bit on the Big Ten Huddle on Tuesday. I do not understand the Caleb Williams hype. I think Caleb Williams is really good. So before anyone says, "Oh, you don't know ball," he's really good. He's really good. He's got great escapability, great arm strength, has pretty good accuracy, right? His receivers were, better than most secondaries they played, right? So he had a bit of an advantage there, and I'm not going to fault him for that. He holds the ball too long, plays hero ball. He's not a generational prospect. And I think anyone who tells you that, they're obsessed with the wow play. But the reality, he's really, really good. He's probably worthy of a top 10 pick, right? Like I probably worthy of a top 5 pick. Like I'm not here to say that Caleb Williams is not a good player. I just don't think he's a generational guy. And and that's not to say that he won't do well in the NFL. How you are as a prospect now versus how you develop, it changes, right? I think you have to be in a good situation. I think there's a reality that CJ Stroud, you look at Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, I all along would have picked CJ over Bryce, but also I'm not going to sit here and play dumb that CJ was helped a lot more by his situation than Bryce was in Carolina. And if you swap the two, I think Bryce does a lot better than CJ. Carolina is a dumpster fire right now, and Houston did a good job preparing to have CJ land there by getting Tunsil on his blind side and drafting Tank Dell and getting Dalton Schultz. They actually prepared to bring in a young quarterback, whereas Carolina was like, "Hey, Bryce, do the stuff that you did at Alabama." Is like, "Oh, that doesn't work in the league." So that gets me to comments made by the best/worst analyst in all of college football, Colin Cowherd. I actually like Colin. He's fun. He's entertaining. He's a shock jock, right? There's a clip of him saying that the Bears would do well to move on from Justin Fields because the quote, I believe, was Caleb Williams is significantly better right now than Justin Fields. He's significantly more talented and significantly more accurate.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called
The Deal.
Listen to the deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Did he watch Justin Fields at Ohio State? I just don't think he did. And by the way, I'm going to go back to high school recruiting rankings. He, in the same breath, he was like, oh, like Trevor Lawrence, he was a generational prospect. And, he went to a bad franchise and, it's a roller coaster and Justin Fields is bad. You do realize they were essentially equal in the high school, in high school prospects, as high school prospects, right? You realize that. Do your research, man. And then, you want to talk about dumpster fire franchise? Well, that would be the Bears. They have played hot potato with quarterbacks. They haven't built around Justin Fields. And then when he does play, when he's able to be healthy, yes, has he made some back-breaking mistakes? Sure. Was the team also starting to rally around him? Yeah. Do I want Justin to stay in Chicago? No. But that gets me to the point. So a lot of people are saying, should we draft Caleb Williams or should we and trade Justin Fields, or should we build around Justin Fields? There's a lot of debate around this, and I think there's a lot of pros and cons on both sides, right? I think with Chicago, if you choose to build around Justin Fields, there's a reality that if you hit, then you got to pay him, right? Because he's in the fourth year of his contract. You've got to deal with whether you got to deal with that contract, which means you can't necessarily pay as many guys to be around him. Whereas with Caleb Williams, you're on a rookie contract. So that is a downside of keeping Justin. And if you trade Justin, you can get more picks and you can build a little bit more around Caleb, right? Although I don't know what you're going to get for Justin, because I think I haven't been looking too hard into what the trade value would be. But that is a detriment is you have 1 year and then you gotta deal with either paying him or he walks as a free agent. So that's no good. That being said, if you draft Caleb, what if he's worse? Here's the thing. You don't know how they're going to pan out in the league. You just don't. And especially if they go to a franchise that is bad. It could be great. Caleb Williams could end up being a top 10 quarterback in the league. I have no doubt that that's possible. At the same time, we thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be tearing up the league by now. He's been good, not great. Bryce Young has really struggled in year one, right? I'm trying to think of other top tier quarterbacks that we were like, oh, he's definitely, Deshaun Watson has and part of some of that's off the field stuff. RG3 was another one who after he got hurt, really struggled. A lot of top tier quarterbacks, we think, oh, they're going to be great. They're going to be great. They're going to be great. Let's be honest. They don't always hit. And if you struggle if you struggle there, you miss the opportunity with Justin, who has proven that he at least has had some flashes. Like, you could trade the number 1 pick down, get more picks. You could draft Marvin Harrison. You could draft an offensive tackle. You can actually solidify your team. And if I'm remember correctly, I believe the Bears have the number 1 and number 9 picks overall. Like, you can get an offensive tackle easily. You can get a wide receiver easily. And yeah, they have the number 1 and number 9 picks. So, like, you could probably trade to the Commanders, who are going to be looking for a quarterback, probably want to get Drake May, or you could probably trade to the Patriots or the Cardinals, who might also be looking for quarterbacks. Remember how Mac Jones and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, those are some of the quarterbacks I was thinking about. Surefire picks, right? You could trade the number 1 pick down to one of those 3 teams, get more picks, get a wide receiver, Marv, Neighbors, Adunze. I think all 3 of those guys are 3 of the top 5 picks in the draft. Then you can be at number 9 and get Joe Alt or get Olu Fashanu. And all of a sudden, your offense is a lot better. Get a running back in free agency, get another running back, later in the draft. Or if you trade the number 1 pick down and get more picks, get another running back, get more offensive linemen, load up. All of a sudden, you've surrounded Justin with something that he hasn't had like his entire career, which is a really good offense with real talent. Like, just having DJ Moore, who is a tweener receiver, like a 1 or a 2, and then having Darnell Mooney, who is really maybe a 3. Like, having those guys and then a bunch of revolving doors at wide receiver, like, that's not good enough. And then the offensive line has been trash. Get him help. But all this is to say is that I think there are real pros to taking Caleb Williams. But this nonsense that he's significantly better, significantly more accurate, significantly more talented, it just screams to me that Colin Cowherd really likes Caleb Williams and he wants to make headlines. Don't fall for the trap. Caleb Williams, he's a really good prospect. He's not elite. Drake May is a really good prospect. He's not elite. And I don't really care what anyone says. There's going to be 5 or 6 quarterbacks that go in round 1, and only 2 or 3 of them should. Like, a lot of people think Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, like, all these guys are first-round picks. Maybe. I think there's a lot of players, skill position, offensive linemen, that are safer and more surefire hits than any of these quarterbacks, quite frankly. So that'll do it for this edition of the Big Ten Football Talk podcast. Thanks for listening. Again, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts, leave a review. Before I close, also, I just want to give a shout out and thanks to a number of folks who reached out about the health stuff that I talked about. Illini Bubba, Yankee Wolverine, Andy, I think it's 240 Andy. Really appreciate you guys reaching out. Chris Ebersol, Jim Ebersol. Really love you guys. Thankful for your prayers, your support. And again, make sure you stay tuned. I'll try to have an episode out for next Monday. And then make sure to catch us Tuesday night on the Big Ten Huddle. Make sure to follow us there. Subscribe. We are 40 subscribers away from 1,000. So if you haven't subscribed to the Big Ten Huddle yet, make sure you do. Thanks for listening. Take care. God bless.